Hello and welcome to a Thursday Showdown breakdown, an actual good game edition. You know, when I pulled up the slate, I was like, oh, it's got to be Panthers-Falcons Thursday Night Football, right? It's got to be Mariota versus PJ Walker. But no, it is Lamar Jackson against Tom Brady. We're cooking with some gas. Cody, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Adam. Yeah, I love these slates. I love Lamar Jackson showdown slates. I think so many interesting ways to go. I'm excited to get into this one.
Gary, we meet again. Just finished up the awards show for anyone who wants to watch that. That is up on the site right now. How's it going?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, this is a fun game. I'm looking forward to it.
I think one thing about this slate is that both quarterbacks have been underperforming. Tom Brady with a divorce narrative. Is he distracted? Is he miserable? Not playing well? Touchdown rate is way down. Lamar Jackson got off to the hottest start in the NFL through the first 3 weeks, and has since been, quite frankly, bad. Has Lamar Jackson. It creates an interesting dynamic here. We have two really good quarterbacks that we like a lot. However, they have not been playing well. Cody, what do you think about this slate as a whole?
Yeah, I think as a whole, it's interesting because you mentioned the underperformance. And as I was going through this slate, I kept thinking, man, maybe the tide of public perception has finally turned on this Bucs offense and on Tom Brady in particular, and the field's not going to want to go there. And then you start to look into some of the specific pricing dynamics on this slate, and it really feels like we're going to see a lot of Bucs heavy stuff as you kind of look through the roster utilization projections. There's so many underpriced high skill position players in this field that like you start to get the sense that some of these guys are going to end up getting squeezed, and you have really nice price tags on a couple of guys that might see their ownership steamed out of control in tournaments. So I'm really thinking through how can I find leverage and still roster guys with high upside without sacrificing too much base projection.
Yeah, really, really interesting stuff. I think, Gary, one of the questions of the slate is, do you think all this Tom Brady stuff is noise, or is this actually the end? Because I made the mistake of calling for the end of Tom Brady. I'm not exaggerating, probably like 5 years ago. And I took the L on that. And since I have not been calling for the end on Tom Brady at all, I've accepted him as outlier, superhuman freak. This year, a lot of people are saying it's the end again. I think that's a big question on the slate. Do you think it's over for Tom Brady?
Yeah, I also remember making that similar mistake. And just maybe because I've been burned before, I'm not ready to say quite yet. We're not even halfway through this season. I know it's been a mess. He's been dealing with a lot of injuries to a lot of the pass catchers. I don't think he trusts his protection, which is a problem for Tom Brady, obviously. But I'm willing to give it another week or two. And I think tonight's really the telltale sign here. At home, in prime time, against a matchup that's been friendly to quarterbacks throughout the season. Like, this is the spot we're going to really know, I think, if it is the end for Brady or not. Like, not black and white, but I think we'll get a better hint.
Let me bring up, I'm going to try to be producer Adam here real quick. I am going to share my screen to this highlight, hopefully. Here we go.
Oh my goodness, you never see him do that.
I mean, look at this.
Mike Evans going
Is the narrative around Tom Brady different if Mike Evans doesn't do this?
Right, exactly.
In the face, and
I mean, look at that.
Easy touchdown. Too easy for Mike Evans.
Look at that.
It's hard to watch. It really is hard to watch.
Does that. Oh my goodness. What a start to the game. In the Bucs.
It's especially hard to watch with someone that was like 3x Mike Evans last week at DFS and felt really good about it when that ball was in the air.
Yeah, I mean, so if that gets completed, Brady's stats look whole different. The game looks whole different. So I just want to be clear on that, I think I have some concerns on Tom Brady, certainly not ready to write it off yet. And I would also add that Ravens secondary, has had injuries, but even when they've been healthy, they have been a bit of a pass funnel this year. You can certainly throw on the Ravens. Anyways, get into it here at the quarterback position. I'm not sure if you have a read on what's been going on with Lamar lately. Cody, it has not been great. It certainly hasn't been like the best spots ever for Lamar, but still, usually he is scoring 20 fantasy points, no problem. Last few weeks, he hasn't even been a top 12 quarterback. Any read on what's going on with Lamar Jackson? And do you think that's going to affect his ownership at all relative to what it's been in the past on showdown slates?
Yeah, I don't. Usually we see this like where one guy clearly separates from the field in terms of like a base and ceiling projection case. And he's really not even that outlierly high priced. This is pretty modest in terms of Lamar Jackson's price tag. Usually we're comfortable rostering him up to 12.8, 13K in some instances. So I do expect that ownership to kind of be a floor case for him. The model really struggles to project these guys that could push 90% plus. And Lamar is certainly one of those guys where your total ownership could easily get to 90%. Captain ownership could come closer to 30, 35% in some cases. I think I wrote in the article that his average Showdown cumulative ownership, total ownership is 85% and 29.4% in captain. So it's certainly still going to be up there. I hate to just say like a guy is due, but it does seem like some touchdown regression is coming. He had 3, 4 passing touchdowns in each of his first 3 games, has only had 2 rushing touchdowns this season. It seems like, the last couple of weeks are more a result of him not finding the end zone either through the air or on the ground, rather than like a result of Lamar just all of a sudden not being a good fantasy asset anymore. So fully expect to be aligned with the field in terms of his ownership. I'm just trying to decide. I have 2 cash game lineups right now that I'm considering. One has Lamar at captain in a total punt option in flex, and the other one has a kicker captain with Lamar in flex. So I think there's a few routes you can go to try and fit in some of these high price guys, especially in cash. But there's definitely a decision point to be made when you're talking about 30% ownership on one quarterback in captain.
Kicker captain. The kicker bros have gotten to you with the kicker captain option. On the other side, obviously you don't get the same ceiling with Tom Brady's deal to get Lamar Jackson. Tom Brady needs to get there on efficiency and yardage, passing yardage alone. You see that reflected in the ownership. I think the ownerships here look relatively efficient to me. Gary, what do you think about playing lineups with Brady captain, anything else on quarterbacks?
Yeah, so I kind of like this game to go over the 45.5 tonight. If I'm kind of playing into the Bucs offense settling back in, if we're playing into Lamar positive aggression. So I do want both quarterbacks in most of my lineups, I think, even in tournaments, which I know makes things thin a little bit. But as Cody mentioned, there's some underpriced skill guys here that I think can make it fit. It's a little bit tough, and it's also tough to play Brady at captain with Lamar sitting there on the other side if you like this game to go shoot out at all. Mm-hmm. So maybe I just like being very heavy on Brady in the flex tonight. And then you get him in your Mike Evans, Chris Godwin captain lineups, obviously. And then I think I like him just if I'm playing this game to go back and forth. So yeah, I do like Brady.
I like that. I like that take for sure. By the way, nobody in chat is talking about the game tonight. They're all talking that I'm not wearing a hat. I have a rare in-person meeting after immediately following this. So yes, it doesn't feel great. Okay.
Fancy.
Let's go to running back. Evan and I talked about it a bunch. This Leonard Fournette stuff is not great. He has been so inefficient, and they used a second-round pick on Rachaad White, and there's rhetoric out of Todd Bowles and other Bucs coaches saying, Rashaad's got to play more. We want Rachaad to play more. We got to see what the young guys have. We don't know how much the old guys have left. Lenny's role in the pass game has been very, very, very good. Every running back who plays with Tom Brady's role in the pass game is typically very, very, very good and productive. We are assuming a relatively tighter split than we've seen between Rachaad White and Leonard Fournette. We also have overs on Rachaad White in props tonight. We took his rush receiving yards over, I think it was yesterday. So the gap here is getting tighter. I think the field senses that and is probably going to be on Rachaad White. But to me, he's one of the better plays at 4,800 in the below 5K range. If you eliminate the kicker and defense, to me, Rachaad White sticks out below 5K. What do you think about Bucs running back stuff, Cody?
Yeah, I think you could see ownership flip here a little bit in favor of Rachaad White over Leonard Fournette. I don't think that Rachaad White will be more owned than Leonard Fournette, but I think that this gap could close a little bit. And for a lot of the same reasons that you're talking about, the split was already getting closer last week in week 7, kind of a weird game script for them. But you saw Rachaad White have 40% of the team's rushing attempts. He was in a route on 40% of dropbacks. And then you have Todd Bowles come out after the fact and say, we need to get him even more touches. We saw this happen in week 3 when Rachaad White was barely playing. He came out, said, we need to get the rookie more touches. He needs to get the ball in his hands. And then after that game has a 43% rush share, runs around on 47% of dropbacks. We saw a big game from him in that respect. So if he's already playing on 40% of the team snaps, and now the coach is saying we want more, I have some reason already. We've got one data point to believe Todd Bowles when he says he wants to get this kid more work. So I kind of think that that's fresh in everyone's minds. And then in terms of Fournette's projected ownership, you have guys that we'll get to in the pass catching core on both sides similarly priced.
Yeah.
So I think there's a situation where in tournaments, especially, you could see Leonard Fournette's ownership get squeezed, and that makes him a little bit more interesting if that happens, as opposed to 44.7% that we have projected now.
Yeah, this would be the showdown bro take. In other words, Leonard Fournette might be a little expensive if we think Rachaad White plays a ton, but there are outcomes where Leonard Fournette, even on limited work, I mean, this role in Bucs pass game, I can't emphasize enough how valuable it is for fantasy. If you can get Leonard Fournette at 30% total ownership and 6% captain, I think that is very, very interesting from a game theory perspective. Obviously, I think Rachaad White is stronger from a points per dollar perspective. Baltimore side, Gary, the question is, I was shocked how much Gus Edwards played last week. They had all these issues with J.K. Dobbins, and then for Gus Edwards to come back from a similar injury, not as bad, but a similar injury, and then they immediately, in his first game, saddle him up to be the lead back. Now, Kenyon Drake still played a lot. Justice Hill still played a lot, but Gus was clearly effective. The question now is, on a short week, coming off your first game in a year, off the ACL tear, can they actually rely on Gus Edwards for that same kind of workload? We're a little bit skeptical. We do have Gus Edwards a little bit limited here, projecting Kenyon Drake and Justice Hill to play plenty. What do you think about Baltimore running backs, Gary?
Yeah, so the ownership on Gus Edwards doesn't scare me, and that's really the only thing that's tipping a checkbox in favor of him for me tonight. Because if I'm going to play into Lamar positive regression, as Cody mentioned, I'm going to play into the passing game going. I'm going to play into this game as a little over. That all kind of leads me to going against the Gus Edwards stream, even though I like that he clearly kind of, catapulted himself into that RB1 role. It's not a fade by any means, but I think I'd rather take a shot on Kenyon Drake, who might be on the field in some passing downs, kind of pairing that stuff up. You get a big discount. He still ran the ball 11 times last week. If we're a little bit concerned about the over workload use of Edwards and maybe the limited nature there, I think I prefer Drake. I think Justice Hill's the guy that pretty much I'd be leaving out, except for the exception of the MME.
Yeah. I mean, Justice Hill ran a ton of routes last week, and that's great, but Lamar doesn't really throw a running back that much anyways. And so, Kenyon Drake, I think, is the best of both worlds. In scenarios where Gus Edwards aggravates, Gus Edwards, they want to take it easy on him on a short week, I think it goes to Kenyon Drake there. I think he's interesting, at least at 4,600 and 10% total ownership. Let's go to the wide receivers and tight ends here. We'll start on the Baltimore side here. Cody, Mark Andrews has been dealing with this knee issue. My first read was that it was rest. That last week was rest, and he was always going to play. It was never that big a deal. Then he goes out and has a really bad game. Then he's limited this week. They're calling him questionable. So maybe it is a real thing with the knee. We also saw Rashad Bateman get back last week and do his thing where he runs a route on roughly 60 to 70% of Lamar dropbacks. Lamar didn't have a ton of dropbacks last week, but Bateman's still a very, very talented guy. What do you think about Baltimore situation here on wide receiver and tight end?
Yeah, there's so many injury things still up in the air on both sides of the ball with Mike Evans on the other side, who we'll get to, that I'm starting to get the sense that ownership is just really going to condense on a couple of these guys. Chris Godwin on the other side is a guy that I think could see his ownership creep up in tournaments this week. Mark Andrews, if you're telling me 9,200, 17.2 base and the ownership may come down because there's some concern about this knee injury, there's some concern that, he was held in check last week. I think the field might carry over some of those concerns into this contest tonight. And if I'm getting paid off with a little bit of an ownership discount here on, a guy that has proven time in and time out that he's an alpha, that he is Lamar Jackson's clear favorite go-to pass catcher, I want to be interested there. I will try to get overweight both total ownership and captain ownership in tournaments tonight on Andrews, and just kind of hope that, the bum knee and the fact that he was held in check by Cleveland last week don't really affect him this week.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, all Mark Andrews captain lineups need to have Lamar. Do Mark Andrews flex lineups need to have Lamar also? I kind of think so, but what do you think about Mark Andrews lineups with or without Lamar?
Yeah, I think Mark Andrews is still going to get there because he finds the end zone. I mean, he can clearly rack up the volume and give you kind of one of those 10 for 100 type games and get the DraftKings bonus and still get there. But I think if Mark Andrews is the optimal captain, he's certainly carrying Lamar along with him. If he just ends up in the flex, it could be a situation where maybe scoring is down. So in those lineups, if I've got Mark Andrews in the flex, I would just be boosting Lamar Jackson's projection. I would not be locking him in those situations.
Okay. The other side, what a mess. I mean, we haven't had all four of these guys healthy, I don't think, this year. Godwin, Evans, Julio, Perriman, Scotty, that group. We're currently projecting Russ Gage out and Julio in as number 3 wide receiver. Julio hasn't played in a while. That's one of the things that is up in the air. Cody mentioned the Mike Evans situation. Maybe Cody should just run through all the injury stuff going on with Bucs wide receivers before we talk about it.
Yeah, Mike Evans is expected to play, but has been limited this week with the ankle injury. It was a DMP on Monday and then got limited practices in. So I kind of assume that he's more on the fine spectrum than playing through something, but it's still clearly there's something nagging there that he's dealing with an ankle. Russell Gage, as you mentioned, is out. Julio Jones is expected to play, though we don't have that confirmed yet. He's been limited this week in practice as well. So as it stands, we expect 3 wide receiver sets to be Mike Evans, Julio Jones on the outside, Chris Godwin in the slot, and then Cameron Brate will still be out with the neck injury. So that'll open the door for, the rookie Kate Otten at the tight end position.
And I think a question, Gary, is can Julio in this state come back in and actually play that every down 3 wide receiver set role, or are we going to see more Perriman and Scotty Miller? Because if we're going to see plenty of Perriman and or Scotty Miller out there, they're really cheap, particularly Perriman, who's only 1,200. Julio at 5,400 scares me. I don't know how much they can get out of him. I do think Mike Evans is fine. What do you think about all this Bucs stuff?
Yeah, Scotty Miller's the kind of guy that at 3,200, even if Julio does suit up at all, that I'm probably not even putting in my pool. And I know that sounds blasphemous to Cody on a 1-game slate. You use everybody, but he's more expensive than Perriman. The ceiling is way lower, and you got all that target competition. It's just not interesting to me. Perriman though is at 1,200 because he could just one new bomb and that's it for Perriman. So he's the kind of guy that I like. I want to say I want to play some Julio here. I just have no idea. He seems like a true game time decision. He hasn't played in weeks. He was looking pretty good at the very beginning of the season. I think him and Brady were building up some rapport, but I think I would just rather play into the Evans and Godwin ownership than force Julio here because he'd play into their ceilings,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'd be careful about, I think, well, I was going to say max 2 of Godwin, Evans, Julio. In a lineup, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. What about 3 that includes Perriman? Because Perriman, you're really just hoping for like one shot. Can you play Godwin, Evans, and Perriman?
In a Brady captain lineup, I would do that.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. The guy we didn't mention is Kate Otten, who was headed for an air ball on my cash team until the garbage time or close to garbage time last week, where he goes off and catches a 30-yard pass and ends up with 10 DraftKings points. I think he's overpriced here at 5K a little bit, but not drastically. And I think he's fine and a reasonable play. But yeah, I think in the optimal lineups, you're going to get to a lot of stuff that's more stars and scrubsy to get the stuff in. One point here I wanted to make is the Godwin's Evans stuff. I don't know why DraftKings did it. $2,000 less, Chris Godwin versus Mike Evans. We have Godwin the better projection, and that is not injury adjusted. We're projecting Mike Evans full role. And so for the guy projected better to be 2,000 less, I think there's some people pointing out that maybe ownership is going to be more separate there, not as clumped together. What do you think about Godwin versus Evans strategy, Cody?
There's a lot of these teams that have 2 very clear top pass catchers, and we saw it a lot with Kansas City when it was Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. We see it a lot with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. We're going to see it again with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and the field needs to give us that ownership discount one of these times. I've called it out time and time again in the past with these high-priced pass catchers when their teammate, who is equally as talented, is $2,000 or more cheaper. I see it all the time with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and we never get that ownership discount. If the field owns Mike Evans at the same rate that they're owning Chris Godwin or anywhere close, it's a huge mistake, and it should just be Godwin, every time. Mm-hmm. And I think Godwin is pretty close to a cash game lock at 9K, not having any of the same injury concerns that we might have for Mark Andrews. But in large field tournaments, I do think, and small field tournaments, some of the stuff that I'll be playing, I do think that, one of these times we're going to get the ownership discount that we deserve for having to pay up 2K to get to Mike Evans. I think Evans could come in closer to like 30%. As the field really forces in Godwin, who could come closer to 60 or 70%. And if that is the case, then, there's no way that Chris Godwin should be 2-1 to outscore Mike Evans. So I want to be in on that. I just hope that I'm not wrong in calling for this pay up to be contrarian ownership discount that I've called for so many times in the past.
And the other thing is, if Mike Evans, we already talked about Brady, if Mike Evans catches that ball, if Mike Evans catches that ball last week, nobody would be batting an eye at Mike Evans being more expensive than Chris Godwin here. Obviously, that doesn't affect our projections very much. They're not really based on box score results. Our projections are more based on usage and historical baselines. But anyways, I digress into virginity. Let's go to kicker and defense, Cody. This is an actual slate where maybe people won't want to play them as much. I think if any kicker actually matters in the NFL, Justin Tucker is outrageous. I know they always joke about it on on red zone and stuff like that. I mean, dude bangs 55, 60 yarders. Like, it's nothing. What do you think about kicker and defenses tonight?
Yeah, I mentioned it off the front. I actually think that the team that I'm going to land on for cash tonight is going to be a Justin Tucker captain kicker team. I think it allows you to fit everything that you want. I think the floor in these contests is just so much safer from the kickers, even if it's high scoring and even if Baltimore's scoring touchdowns as opposed to settling for field goals. I think the floor for them versus the similarly priced skill position players is just so much stronger. I mean, you look at the options that are priced right above them in terms of skill position, and it's Rachaad White, who could be on the wrong side of a split. It's Brashad Perry, it's Julio Jones, it's Cade Otton. It's some of these guys that we don't have very much conviction in. You can tell me I can drop down $800, $1,000 to the kickers who I feel pretty strongly about their base projections, and I think both of them make for strong cash game considerations tonight. In tournaments, it's going to be the same thing. I think that they're good plays because of the projections, but the ownership is going to be maybe outsized for what you would expect. And in tournaments, I like some of those same guys that I just mentioned in terms of price pivots. I think Rachaad White will be, relatively popular. I think Cade Otton might even be a little bit popular there, but guys like Julio, guys like Kenyon Drake, who are similarly priced, could come in with much lower ownership and still have that, same upside, same ceiling there in terms of finding their ways into winning lineups.
Very interesting. Okay. We got about 3 minutes here for questions before we get to the flag plans. There's a lot of Godwin hate out there. Godwin overrated by everyone. Godwin will be more owned. My take on Chris Godwin is maybe he's not as good as he was pre-ACL. Like, I'm willing to allow for that. I don't think it's crazy to say that he's not as explosive. He's not as good at getting open. His role, though, is just as good as it's been. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't know, Gary. Have you seen anything that makes you think Godwin maybe isn't himself? His efficiency is certainly down from last year, but his role is still awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you always say that target earning is a skill, and he still has that skill, right? He had 12 targets 2 weeks ago, 10 targets last week, something like that. Yeah. The targets are there, the role is there. It's hard to be the exact same person, same player that you are before an ACL tear, but I think he's still young enough that I think we'll see that explosiveness flash at times, and I think he's still a very good player, even if he's not an elite wide receiver anymore.
Andrew chimes in and says that Andrews has not practiced at all this week, right? I believe that's right. No practice at all. But a lot of times these guys don't practice on a short week if they're dealing with something. Clearly, he's dealing with knee soreness. I didn't think it really affected him or his role last week. It's just, guys have bad games, period. If people are going to back off Mark Andrews because they think that he has some really debilitating injury, I'm certainly interested there. There's obviously concern, though, Cody. It's hard. I don't think we have a great feel for how healthy Mark Andrews is right now. Do you think the field is going to be scared enough? And you do have Godwin at 9K here to make the ownership on Mark Andrews kind of tank a little bit.
Yeah, I do think that that's possible, and it could pull a little bit away from him. I think Andrews industry-wide is going to project too well for him to go, completely overlooked, but could he come in closer to 35, 40% than the 50% plus that we have projected now? Absolutely. And to point to the health thing, he was a DNP all week. Rashad Bateman still clearly dealing with the foot injury. He was a DNP on Tuesday, but got back to a full practice on Wednesday. So, both guys are listed questionable. I think saw the report from Underdog that said they're both hopeful to play. I feel a little bit better about Bateman's health than I do Andrews, and I assume that the field would kind of share those same concerns.
Isaac asks, our defense is viable to play a sloppy Thursday night game. I think there's always room for a short week game to be more sloppy than it would be on a Sunday. I don't know that translates to defense, but as Cody always talks about, this is a game where people might not be thinking about playing defense as much, and therefore they're better plays. Cody hates playing defenses when they are chalk, when they are very owned. We have 15% and 20%. That seems very palatable to me on the defensive side of the ball. Cody, what do you think about playing defenses?
Yeah, I think both really reasonable, and I think the Bucs DST makes a ton of sense. They've got a good defensive line. Lamar's a scrambler and is tough to bring down in the backfield, but I think you could see opportunities for sacks there, especially if Baltimore is forced to pass more than we generally expect. And 20.8% total ownership. That's when I like to play DSTs. We just saw 18.7% captain ownership on the Patriots defense against the Bears. Don't ever play that. Don't play that. Play them when they're 20% owned, 2% owned in captain. That's fine. Just don't play this 18.7% on captain defense. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's really bad. Really bad. 18%. My God. Ravens D is better than Panthers D. Evans and Godwin both going off. I mean, Ravens D is worse than Panthers D. Evans and Godwin both going off. All right, I can
I'll
dig
take it.
I don't disagree that Ravens defense is probably overrated in the minds, or people think the Ravens defense is better than it is in the minds of a lot of casual people out there. Mike says it's Levy's meeting outdoors so they can at least wear sunglasses to protect from the glare. You know what, Mike? You just got banned. Lenny and Rashad White together. Gary, what do you think about that one? Playing Lenny and Rashad White together.
Yeah, sure. I think it's fine. I would negatively correlate still because I think they do eat directly into each other's stuff. But the price wise, and if we do anticipate White getting a bigger role, if receivers go out at the one, Lenny gets a couple touchdowns, or White gets a couple touchdowns, Lenny catches 8 balls. There's routes. There's routes.
What I would say on that is this role, forget about who's in it. It could be freaking Gio Bernard. It doesn't matter. Is so incredibly productive that I think I'm more likely to play Fournette and White together than I am a lot of other running back duos. Like when they're in there, they touch the ball so much. Cody, what do you think about? Oh my God, what do you think about Lenny and Rashad together?
Yeah, I think the way that I'm going to handle it in building lineups is a negative boost when one of them is at captain. And I don't know how much Rashad I'm going to get at captain, but I would allow both in the flex. I think they can provide top 6 scores together. But I think if you get like a captain Lenny game where he's the optimal captain and goes for 25 plus, it's much less likely that Rashad gets there as well.
Adam says, is Cody and Witsec? Is that some Nebraska talk or something? I don't even know what Witsec is.
I don't know what that is either.
Okay.
Going to elaborate, Adam.
Andrews or Lenny straight up. Andrews or Lenny straight up. If I knew Andrews was healthy, I would probably say Andrews. I think with the risk is probably Lenny for me. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the team that I have now is Andrews, and I guess I'm going to have to see if I can get a closer to lock, which I mean, I doubt we will get any more information close to lock, but the team that I have is now Andrews, because I think the same concern that you can make for Andrews' health, I guess you can make for Lenny's role, but I don't know if that's fair to make.
Yeah. I just think even Lenny at 60% or 65% is still really good. 5-1 or 1-5 tonight. Which would you prefer for the onslaughts?
Yeah, I like the Bucs onslaughts better just because of the fact that we know the pass rate is going to be elevated regardless of how the game goes, and you could see multiple guys get there. Whereas like the Baltimore offense could be really condensed. It could be really condensed around just Lamar. It could be really condensed around just Andrews. I think that we know, or we have pretty good confidence that the Tampa Bay offense will be more spread out.
Agreed. I also don't know if I'm playing into narrative, and I already made this mistake with Packers and the Rodgers when they've had a couple of bad losses this year, but I will be hard pressed to see Brady not do everything in his power to bounce back from that embarrassment last week. Like I'm on the Bucs side tonight. I think I'm on the Bucs side tonight.
You know what? Somebody here asked for Charlie said favorite contrarian take for tonight. My favorite contrarian take is Mark Andrews is actually like 95% healthy, and this is all nonsense. He's going to go out there and take his big balls out and put him on the Bucs. That's my contrarian take. I think everybody is freaking out about Andrews' injury. I think it's going to be fine, and his game last week. All right.
Agreed.
Let's get to the planting of the flags, the flagging of the plants. Gary, if you're ready, I'll give you the honors.
Oh boy. It's an interesting slate. I think though I'm going to do with that crazy GPP thing you were saying right at the top, and I'm going to say Leonard Fournette is going way overlooked here on this slate. I think the efficiency's gone out the window, but I think 8% captain is low, and we've seen these 10 catch games from him. And even if it's just to get the offense in rhythm early, I think he could pile up some big points like on the first couple drives of this game, and hopefully it'll keep him in the game. So I like Lenny tonight a lot. I'll be over the field.
Yes. Hopefully we can get Rashad White over in props and still get Lenny for the Showdown Bros. I think that's certainly possible. Cody, go ahead.
All right, man. I'm going to make the field give me this pay up to be contrarian, ownership discount that I've been begging for on Jamar Chase, on T. Higgins. I've done it in years past with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce when Tyreek was more expensive and never got it. But come on, Mike Evans is $2,000 more expensive than Chris Godwin, has a worse base projection. He's going to be tough to fit into builds. I think Mike Evans is the optimal captain tonight and beats Chris Godwin straight up.
All right. Mike Evans, optimal captain tonight from Cody. I'm going to lean back in to the Mark Andrews knee thing, coming off of the worst game we've seen out of Mark Andrews in a very, very, very long time, and all this stuff around his knee. I mean, we have 51% on Mark Andrews right now. I would not be surprised if we are hot there at all, considering all the guys around him. The problem is that I think the one way it does come in at 51% is if everybody who has Lamar is just like, screw it, I'm stacking Lamar with Mark Andrews. And so that's how that goes. That said, I think Mark Andrews' knee thing is mostly fine. He's going to be out there, I hope, healthy. And I think it's a risk worth taking at 9,200 for the most dominant pass catcher on the Ravens and one of the most dominant pass catchers in the league. That is going to do it for this Showdown breakdown. Cody, tell the people where they can find you on the Twitter machine.
At CMain7, you'll find me tilting everyone, rostering their 20% on DSTs and kickers, and watch me lose my money.
Perfect. Gary, where can they find you on the Twitter machine?
Yeah, I'm at ghartman314. You'll find me justifying Kadarius Toney being shipped off the Giants to all my followers. So there you go.
Perfect. We do have a goal of reaching 30,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the NFL season. That's why we're out here doing these free shows. Would really appreciate you guys hit the subscribe button before you check out. And big good luck tonight. Get out there, take it down, take down something big. For Cody, for Gary, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.